This is Toyota CHR, GR, and I'm purposely not putting GR in front of CHR because that would make it a GR Yaris or a Toyota Supra with a GR badge on the back of it. Toyota in their wisdom have decided to make a trim spec called GR. So if you're like me, you may have rocked up thinking you were getting some, I don't know, 300 brake horsepower potent crossover. Not the case. You can get 122 brake horsepower or 184 brake horsepower and a 1.8 or a 2 litre in this CHR. And yeah, it's got, you know, slightly nicer wheels. It still has a boot spoiler that I've seen on the orange edition, for example, that I had last year. The door handles are still high up. This is the top spec one though in the GR, so you got keyless entry on it, you get blind spot everywhere, better headlights. But in that colour as well, you just would kind of say that's just a Toyota CHR, isn't it? And if you want the 2 litre one in the GR spec, it's north of €40,000. So why should you buy this version of it? We'll try and find out in this video. And hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. That would be deadly of you. Thank you. One of the places you'll find the GR badge is right here. The boot is not electric, you might expect it to be. It's still 377 litres, which by hatchback standards, generally hatchback somewhere between 380, 400 litres is where it's at. Now I do like the fact that there's batteries here for the hybrid, but they still have storage areas down here for you to hide things. So I like that, because if this shelf doesn't really sit anywhere, and you can't drop the floor either, and that sits in if you're someone else will sort that out, it's grand. Toyota have thought of your kids. They've put like areas that you can stick their bottles in, safe areas to keep their pictures and paintings from school in. But then they've also forgotten about your kids in other ways, because there's no USB charging back here. There's no armrests to separate them from killing each other. The roof will slope in, but again, if your kids aren't massively old, that's not going to be so much of a problem. The hump on the floor isn't gigantic. It's definitely less severe than a lot of cars, but it's still quite dark, and you know, they'll find something to give out about, but nothing much has changed in the back of this car over a version that doesn't have a GR badge on it, apart from the little red and white stitching on the seats, which is grand. Now, if your leg room is needed in the back here, you need to put them behind the passenger seat and move that forward. If your driver obviously can't really adjust how they sit, there's less room there. Up front, there's like a different finish on the textures of the doors. Again, more stitching, a little bit of red stitching over the steering wheel, which is nice. The steering wheel is huge, by the way. You'll get some GR badges in your dials. It's all colour, but then you're mixed with a mixture of analog, bit of red stitching over your gear selector. Nice big storage, like a large water bottle can fit in here. Bit of armrest storage down there, another large water bottle, and then they've also got room for bottles in your door bins. I like bottles. I'm sure you know by now, but just in case you don't, CarPlay and Android Auto are standard now on Toyota. You do need a cable to plug them in, and that will be ably assisted by the one USB. There's one USB port in this car. Really high quality materials used on the dashboard, though the stitching is very, very nice. You know, it's really like that leather feel is very good. And if you like physical buttons, well, you're spoiled for choice, because your aircon, your AC, your auto connection, your heated seats, they are all right at your fingertips. You're not messing around with screens. This display is getting a little bit long in the tooth. It would be nice to have some sort of refreshed graphics and images, and you know, it's just looked the same for a long time. These seats do have a sporty GR feel about them. Probably not as bolstered as the actual GR Yaris. It's a bit like, you know, someone who sticks a GTI badge on the back of their car and it's not actually a GTI. That's what the CHR GR is. You know that? It's nice. It's just when you think of the thoroughbreds that the GR actually is on the back of. There's a leaf falling. This time yesterday I was in Mallorca filming, and now there's leaves and conkers everywhere. Again, I just don't think there's enough in here that's different over a Luna Sport. See how many times I can say Luna Sport on this review today. Naturally, I'm going to say go for the 2 litre 180 brake horsepower plus version of the car, because there's quite a jump over the 1.8 in terms of brake horsepower. It's about 60, so that's a significant enough amount. It will add up, there is no doubt. Get a little kind of an electric car style warning from the outside of the vehicle, just to warn pedestrians and stuff like that, cyclists, you know. You don't want to hit these people, and they need to hear you coming, because if you're in EV mode in this car, it's totally silent. It's just like any normal electric car, even though you don't have to charge it. I don't want to labour the point, because I feel like I mention it every time, but maybe you've never watched a Toyota review before, maybe you've never watched one of my reviews before, and if you have, welcome, and hit subscribe, and thank you. So you got the CVT gearbox, and the only real issue that you'll be ever able, from a reviewer point of view, is because it's so economical. Like, no matter how hard you drive this car, it's doing 6 litres per 100 kilometres, and I've no doubt you'll probably get that to around 5 or maybe less. It's just when you floor it, and it's just a linear transition of noise and power, and then as soon as you ease off the throttle again, the noise goes. So even if it is in petrol mode, but it's not under load, it's not particularly loud, and obviously then when it has enough charge into the battery, that sustains the momentum of the car. And you know, Toyota are in a space for many, many years where other people are now kind of going to, like the new Nissan Qashqai will soon have an option in 2022 where electric power moves the wheels of the car, but you fill it with petrol. You know, and Toyota have been doing this for, well, 20 years in the Prius. Now, even though it has a high up position, it handles really, really well. So it's sharp. And generally Toyotas are quite sharp in how they handle. Some of the driver aids you're going to get are blind spot, cross traffic monitoring on the rear. If you don't know what that means, if you're reversing the car out of a driveway or something like that, and there's cars or people approaching from left or right, and maybe you've seen them anyway and it's fine, but maybe you haven't, the car will warn you that you've got traffic on either side. It's really, really good. It, no doubt, is going to help prevent crashes. It's just going to eliminate them. Those type of, you know, low speed accidents where, you know, you're on your driveway, you're doing 2 miles an hour and you have an accident, which is probably the most, you know, one of the most likely times you're going to have an accident. Anyway, so that's really, really good. I like the seats are comfortable. I feel like they're supportive on a long journey. The main thing though is, again, don't let the GR badge fool you, because this just drives like any Luna Sport or whatever CHR with the more powerful engine in it, and that is really the only difference. It doesn't feel any firmer, it doesn't handle necessarily any better. You could argue it looks better from some of the spec, absolutely, but I don't get into this car and feel like it's massively different from some of the other high spec CHRs, like that orange edition I had on the channel last year. You know, that was nice. Why would you go for this over that? And that was already kind of at the 40 scale if you were going for the more powerful engine. And you know what though? It's not about the driving aspect of the car, I know, but see that pillar, the way that's covered up with nicer materials over? You're not seeing bare metal of the car. A lot of brands could learn from that, because Toyota, you don't feel like they, no matter what's going on with the company, no matter what new models come out, I have not seen them skimp on any materials. If anything, they've gotten better. And similarly, you can say the same for Lexus. They just don't cut corners when it comes to materials and quality, and they're just, you know, for as long as I've been around, I'm sure most of you as well, Toyota have always just built honest, predictable, and at times, cars that are just really well built and just go on forever. You can whack the gearbox into sport mode. I don't know why you would. Just leave it alone, let it do its thing. This car also will give you radar guided cruise control, stays away from the car in front depending on how big or narrow you want the gap to be. That's all standard. Decent headlights, sensors, cameras, you know, all that stuff is on board as standard. So you can spec these things on a cheaper CHR, and you probably won't be doing the €7,000 walk to the, you know, to this model. The car starts just over 31. It just depends. I don't think anyone who actually is into GR and all it stands for is going to get excited by a car like this in general. I suppose I can kind of understand why Toyota want to just lend the trim badge to the car, but when you have a GR badge on the back of a Supra and the GR Yaris, I'd probably leave it alone, you know, because they're so good. But yeah, if you want like a bit of stitching that makes you feel like you're in a GR and you're not in a GR, then it might be worth a look for this particular spec. This kind of stop-start traffic, I mean, it lends itself very, very well to that. Like, we're just in EV mode. If you're not too hard with the accelerator, it doesn't even go into engine mode at all. It's not an EV, but you can rock up to a school without pumping emissions out, which is something that is important. It's something that I care about, and we need to stop people sitting at schools running their cars, particularly the diesel cars, but any cars, at idle. And the more cars that we can have that, you know, protect kids' lungs is a good thing. And just on that note, for example, I'm driving the car 22 minutes now, and it's been in EV mode 77% of the time. And I've driven Toyotas where I can achieve low 80s on really hot days with climate whacked on full and stop-start traffic, and 77%. That's a pretty decent number. Main thing to check out in the CHR is if you're getting into this car thinking I've got 2 kids and I've got 2 buggies and all this stuff and bikes and everything and I'll bring it all with me. You won't, not in this. I know someone who had 1 kid and one of these, second kid came along, bought a Corolla Estate because they needed the space. If your kids are a bit more grown up and you don't need the boot as often, or let's just forget about kids. Not everyone wants kids. Maybe you just want something that looks pretty cool. It still is an unusual looking design, even after 5 years, whatever. If you're just, you know, a retired couple or a couple or someone who just likes the slightly higher position and likes the looks of the car, then it is worth checking out. I just don't think there's enough going on, though, to stick a GR badge on it in the first place. But equally, you know, those alloy wheels and the black roof, yeah, they're different, but it could be a Luna Sport. I said it again, didn't I? Just buy a Luna Sport. It has everything you need. Thanks for watching.